Tess, can you hear me? I can't hear you.
I was muted.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if I was on or not. I don't even know if I got the right meeting.
This is the ZBA meeting, so.
Okay, then I got the right meeting. It didn't start. Well, it starts at 7, right?
Not till 7. That's correct. Yeah.
Hey, Tess, can I ask a question to you? I have to
Sure.
ask it when the board's there. I was just reading they increased the fees.
Effective January 1st.
How did that go into effect? I just was curious. That's all, because I just heard about it. I just read it just now.
January 1st.
But how did they decide to raise the fees now? I guess what I'm asking is what prompted right now with everybody in pandemic and everything being tight, why now to raise the fees?
So it's directly in response to the pandemic. So the fee directly, it correlates to the cost of printing the legal notices in the newspaper. And because extra language was needed because of to describe the laws that allow public meetings to happen virtually, that is now part of the legal announcement, that has increased the fees. So it's surprisingly expensive to post the legal ads in the newspaper.
So as time goes on, is this something that'll always have to happen from now on? Or is this only going to be, the fees are only going to go while the pandemic is still going on? I mean, the pandemic at some point won't be there. Will these fees be brought back because of not being in a pandemic?
I think it'll be reassessed after the pandemic.
But is it in a wording? Is it in the wording for it or anything?
Right, because I think the board is concerned that the fees the newspapers are just naturally going to just increase fees.
Right.
I mean, I'm pretty sure when you submit it, if you're an applicant, that you can ask to see the invoice. It's basically comparable to how much the fee is, surprisingly. I mean, I was surprised.
I know that the fees, a lot of newspapers right now are hurting and they're looking for every which way they can to get income. And I can understand the fees going up. I just was wondering how the town, I just want to know where they came up with the number to raise all the fees on that.
It related to the fact that they were actually, the board was actually paying out of their budget to supplement the legal ads because they were coming in higher because of the extra wording required.
But when the town goes, when those boards go for their budgets, couldn't they just increase the budget for the department on that and without increasing the fees?
That's kind of above my pay grade. So
just
where the decision falls.
They have a budget and taking money out of the budget. Why not just increase the budget?
Well, I mean, the town is limited too, and how much money the town just has.
All right. I'm just curious. I just want to know because it just seems like because people that are building it's quite expensive.
It was surprising to me how much the legal ad. There isn't, what is being asked of is not the board pocketing that money. It's going directly to the newspapers.
Now, does Greenfield get any of that extra income or any of that in on their end? Because they're
no idea.
You wouldn't know? Okay, not a problem. Thank you for answering my question. I appreciate that. Am I the only one on right now?
No, we have, I believe the chair has just signed in, and we have Herb Gilmore, who's on the board as an alternate. Yeah.
Now, what other meetings are going on today?
Just, I'd have to check the town calendar, and I'm gonna mute myself so that I can pull up the agenda so I can have that in front of me.
All right, thank you.
Evening, everyone.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi there.
So we don't have quorum yet. We only have 2 members, me and Jeff. Oh, Herb is signed in, right, Tessa?
Yes, I haven't seen, I believe Andy is Andy Cloutier. Is that?
Yeah, hi,
I'm
Andy.
here.
How are you?
Yeah.
Tessa, do me a favor just for tonight, but make sure you don't forget to change it. Put my name up there
Sure.
on the iPad. Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have the other Andy coming? Has he given us any indication that he's not coming?
Can you turn the volume up or no?
Andy Berg?
Chuck, I think you can do that yourself if you hit the little blue button in the upper right. It allows you to put your name and whatever title you want to put, or
Yeah, well,
you can
I'm
put.
on an iPad and I'm told I can't do that on an iPad.
Okay,
I don't see a blue button on the upper right.
all right.
I think the only way I can possibly do it is go into settings. I'm fearful of doing that until COVID's over, and I'll buy a new computer. So I won't have to worry about this once COVID's over. And I see another unidentified number, a very long number. I don't know what that is. Okay, so Andy, I see Andy coming in. That's good.
Would the person on the phone call be willing to state their name for the minutes?
Someone has a phone, and we would like you to identify yourself so we can put it in the minutes.
Yes, my name is Anna Mancebo.
Anna, A-N-N-A.
Correct.
And what's your other name, part of your name?
My surname is Mancebo, M-A-N-C-E-B-O. Tessa. Tessa, is that Tessa that asked?
Yep. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I have it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I have 7:01. Do we all agree it's 7:01, or at least after 7 or 7 o'clock or beyond?
On that,
I
we
agree.
agree.
Okay.
Good.
Well, I think we all agree on that. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to ask a member for a motion for the approval of the November 23rd, 2020 ZBA meeting minutes.
I just have to read the following the governor's order part. Sorry, everyone.
Thank you, Tessa. Go ahead and do that first.
Sorry, everyone. Following the governor's restrictions on public meetings, this meeting is being held virtually using zoom.com for remote participation only. The public may access it following the instructions on this meeting's agenda posted on the town calendar. If, despite our best efforts, we are not able to provide real-time access, the public can request a recording of this meeting by contacting the town clerk.
Okay. Now I think is the time for me to request a motion and a second to approve the November 23rd, 2020 minutes of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The draft minutes that we most recently received. I believe we received the most recent version on December the 10th, approximately.
I'll also move.
Okay, Jeff Lacy moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Andy seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. It's unanimously approved. Okay, so we have 2 major agenda items, and well, there's really 3 major agenda items, but let's start with the first one, which is item number 2 on the agenda, which is the public hearing for a special permit or a variance on the application of Andrew A. Cloutier. Am I saying that correct, Andrew? Cloutier?
Yes. Cloutier.
Okay.
French Canadian.
Cloutier. Oh, Canadian. Okay. Cludia for construction of a prefab metal shed, 16 feet by 24 feet by 10 feet with a concrete pad at 80 Shore Drive. Is that correct? 12 feet.
That
from
is
the edge
correct.
of the road. Okay, 12 feet from the edge of the road and 13 feet from the boundary of 82 Shore Drive. This is case number 20-003. Okay, I'll begin the proceeding as I always do, and I will read the publication I caused to be published for 2 consecutive weeks in the Daily Hampshire Gazette. And this is a notice of a virtual public hearing for the town of Shutesbury Zoning Board of Appeals. Notice is hereby given that the Shutesbury Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a virtual public hearing on December the 21st, 2020 at 7:00 p.m. on the following application. The application of Andrew A. Cloutier. I'm pronouncing it right for, okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, for property located at 80 Shore Drive for a special permit and or a variance pursuant to Article 9, Section 9.3, Article 10, Section 10.3-2, and or other sections of the Shutesbury bylaw for the construction of a prefab metal shed with a concrete pad without plumbing or electricity. The proposed shed will be approximately 12 feet from the edge of the road and 13 feet from the property line of 82 Shore Drive. Copies of the application are available on the zoning board website at www.shutesbury.org. This is case number 20-003. And then I will read the rest of it since it probably should be read anyway. Public participation will be via virtual means only pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This Shutesbury ZBA meeting will be conducted via remote participation. Instructions for participating in the virtual public hearing will be listed on the meeting agenda posted on the town calendar. Signed by myself, Charles J. Demari, Chair of the Shutesbury Zoning Board of Appeals. Okay, so here we are with the first case, and I'm going to do what I always do to begin these meetings, besides reading the item on the agenda and the notice of public hearing. Andrew, I'm going to go to you, and I can't see you here, Wanky. Oh yeah, there you are. And I'm going to ask you, Andrew, I know we received your application and the plans and the design. I'm going to ask you why we should approve this special permit.
Well, I don't have a basement under my house. It's just on sonotubes. The house is on sonotubes. So I have absolutely no storage. I have a small shed up behind the house, but like my girlfriend has some of my stuff in her basement. My dad has some of his stuff, my stuff at his house, and I just would like to have on-site storage.
Okay. Have you discussed this proposal, Andrew, with any of your neighbors, your abutters?
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
Can you tell us if any of them have voiced any objections to you?
Not any of them.
Did you? I want to put on the record. I forgot the gentleman's name, but I did have a phone call from one of your neighbors expressing concern of the nature of the structure being a prefab metal structure. And I did advise him to call you to see where it was located. Did anybody call you and ask you where it was going to be located on your property?
Yes, that was a guy behind me. I forgot his name.
Okay.
I used to have a, I sold my bass boat this past summer. I used to have like a Shelter Logic garage, and the structure I'm putting up is just more permanent. It's the same, pretty much the same size structure as that. I did have a nice lengthy conversation with the gentleman up behind me.
Okay, and the conclusions of that conversation was what, in terms of his he doesn't object? Is that what it?
He doesn't object because it's not going to obstruct his view at all. I asked him if he saw the Shelter Logic garage that my boat was housed in, and he doesn't remember it. And I'm like, the structure I'm putting up's pretty much the same size, just a little wider.
Okay, and what is that structure you're putting up? I know it's very close to it's an 82 Shore Drive, is that correct?
Yeah.
And that's not where he lives. He lives on the back of your property, is that right?
He lives way up on the back on Wendell Road.
And the people on 82 Shore Drive, did you discuss it with them?
Yep.
And what did
She's
they
got
say?
no problem with it.
Okay, what's that person's name, please?
Tracy
I'm sorry?
Mognigan.
Okay.
Tracy Mognigan.
Okay, all right. All right, so let me turn now to, are there any abutters here that want to speak on this? Any abutters? Okay, I see no abutters. Okay. I'm gonna now open it up to my colleagues, members, Jeff Lacy, Andy Berg, and Herbert Gilmore. Do you have any questions? Any of you have any questions beyond what I have asked of the applicant?
I guess I had two questions. And the first question was, I just want to make sure that I tried really hard to sort of place it in my head as I was driving past, but I drove past after it snowed. So I had a little bit of trouble sort of figuring out where it was. There is sort of like a parked little trailer. Is it sort of in sort of the area right around that trailer? Is that about how far back it is?
Yes, that's my snowmobile trailer. It's going to be a little bit further back than the snowmobile trailer.
Okay. You have it staked out, Andy, is that right? It's staked out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, Andy, to interrupt you. Go ahead. The other.
Oh, not at all. No. I'm sure it was. I went on a foggy night.
Yeah,
after
it's hard to
snowing,
see.
So, yeah. And the other question I had was, I couldn't really tell sort of, is there a particular reason why you wouldn't say have it back, say sort of towards the back of your property adjacent to the other shed? I couldn't see back there, so I don't know more than what you've told us that there's another shed back there. But is there a reason, say, that it might not be behind the house?
I can't do it on. I can't do it on the other side because that's where my leach field is to my septic tank.
That makes sense. Thank you. Those were my two questions.
You're welcome.
All right. Now that you've mentioned that you did a drive-by, I want to put on the record that I also did a drive-by this past Friday. Andy, do you know when you did the drive-by to check out the property?
I did the drive-by at about 6 p.m. tonight, so it's very
contemporaneous. You didn't see much.
I did do it in daylight, and I saw 3 of the stakes in the ground, so I assumed there was another one in the corner, but my view was blocked.
I trust and believe those stakes are there.
Herb or Jeff, do you have questions for the applicant?
Just a couple of observations. I was there today about 2 o'clock, and it was pretty obvious where it goes. It's where you're already storing a trailer, and I think there's something else there as well. So yeah, and I observed that it didn't seem like there was anyone in back of you that would really be affected. If there was anyone in back, that person would be way higher in elevation and up in the woods.
Right.
There really is no second tier behind you, as there is in other places of the lake.
No.
And I did encounter the immediate abutter on 82, and she opined that she has no problem with it and that you need a garage. So, and it appears to fit within section 4.2-2 of our zoning bylaw, 4.2-2B2, which is what we do often. Non-habitable detached accessory structures which can't meet the setback requirements can be allowed by special permit if we make certain findings. And one thing that was cleared up for me is that this applies to both conforming and lawfully non-conforming lots. So there really is there's no issue about your lot, your frontage and your area, which is what was worrying me a little bit, but that's not a consideration. So, and it seems like the location that you've picked is where you would naturally drive into the property and want to have a garage versus other places that might be farther into your lot. So
Right.
a pretty logical location for a garage. So that's what I've observed.
Awesome.
Okay, Jeff, just for the record, it's 4.2-2B, is that correct?
4.2-2B2.
Okay, great. So, and just for all of our education and reminders that the findings that we have to make is that this development, this structure would not be detrimental to the neighborhood in harmony with the residential development in the zoning district and not detrimental to the neighborhood. Is that, do you agree with that criteria, Jeff?
Yes, that's what it says.
Okay. Herb, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
Okay. Now, I've gone through I've exhausted all the questions of the members of the board. Let me ask again, if there are any abutters that have arrived late that want to make a comment at this time. I'm hearing none. Okay, now Andy, applicant Andy.
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything else to say as to the criteria that we must apply? Again, I'm looking at 4.2-2 B2. And again, obviously this is a non-habitable detached accessory structure that does not meet the setback requirements of this subsection. And we are allowed to provide you with a special permit from the, provided that the board finds such structure to be in harmony with the residential development in the zoning district and not detrimental to the neighborhood. Do you want to speak on just that criteria?
No, I'm good. I mean, I did talk to all my abutters and they were on board with it. I mean, I went to them before I even filed the permit to
Okay.
touch base with them and see how they felt about everything. And
okay. Do you want to say anything else?
no, I'm good.
All right, let me take this opportunity to poll my colleagues, Jeff and Andy and Herb, and just to get a sense of where we are here, as to, we're not voting right now, but
right.
Just want to get a sense as to where we are, so I can make some decisions on how we're going to proceed.
Okay.
Anybody want to go ahead? Anybody want to talk first? Herb, Andy, or Jeff, members of the board?
It sounds like others we've done under this section of the zoning bylaw. You know, we've done, I don't know, half dozen of these. You know, they're always accessory structures, non-habitable. And this sounds, you know, given how the lot's put together, where the house is and the sloping area behind it, I mean, this sounds like a logical place for a garage, and we don't hear any objections from abutters. And we certainly have plenty of precedent of doing this for other applicants. So sounds like it could come under that section.
So would you tend to want to support it, Jeff, with or without conditions?
I mean, the only, yeah, I think so.
Any conditions that you can think of, or besides applying with the zoning bylaws and building it substantially as the plan provides? Anything besides those
My,
types of
my,
conditions?
my only question for the applicant is, have the neighbors actually seen renderings of what this structure might look like? It's a prefab metal structure. We probably have something in the file that shows what it looks like, but are the neighbors aware of what its appearance will be?
Yes, I have a color printout. I believe all you have it, and I showed it to them, all my neighbors. It's going to be the same color as my house. The trim's going to be the same. I'm getting a metal roof put on my house, a charcoal metal roof in the spring, and the roof on the garage is going to be the same. So it's going to match my house.
And you told your neighbors that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Andy?
I mean, I guess I am, I think I agree with Jeff. I think that, you know, I think the things that have been answered for me are, you know, why this is the best place for it. I think there's a really good reason why this is the best place for it, and why no other place is quite as ideal or possible, potentially even with the leach field. And I think, you know, my other concern was really with the proximity to number 82, and knowing that that 82 has apparently has good feelings about it, or reasonable feelings about it, or approves of it. You know, I don't think there would be anybody, I think, from my view of that area, there's nobody other than 82 who would be particularly impacted by it. And so I think that if they're on board, I would be generally in favor of such an approval.
Herb Gilmore, any comments, thoughts?
No, I think everything's been covered. Nothing
Okay.
to add.
All right, and I concur and agree with all of you, all my colleagues. Jeff, are you willing to write this up?
Sure.
Okay, can you give, since you're gonna write it, 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, what do you think? It's pretty simple. Well, we won't vote tonight, Andy.
Yeah, that's no
Andy,
problem.
applicant, we're not gonna vote tonight, but what we're gonna do is Jeff's gonna write it up. As he usually does, certainly in the last several years, and then he's gonna write it up as if the 3 other members are voting yes.
Okay.
And himself, of course, obviously. But we're not voting until we review what he wrote, just to make sure we're all in concurrence. So Jeff,
Right,
can you give us a date in January? Let me get my calendar here. Okay.
What we probably need to do is close the hearing, you know, formally close the hearing.
Okay.
And then you call, and then you task me with drafting a decision that I believe captures the sense of the board, but we don't do any voting.
Okay.
Until the board actually sees what the decision says. Because as soon as we vote, we kick in the 10-day time clock, which, you know, as soon as you vote, you have to render it to writing within 10 days, according to state law. So that's a bit of a problem. So yeah, we can do this like we've done it in the past. I'll just draft a decision that I believe reflects what we've discussed. And then when you actually have it in front of you, we can vote on it.
Okay, so you would prefer that I formally close it right now, so there's no more evidence coming in, is that correct?
Usually we close the hearing. You know, if there's nothing else to, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
We close the hearing.
Okay, does anybody object if I close the hearing right now? The other 3 other members. Okay, I'm seeing Andy Berg turning his head no. And Herb, do you have any objections if we close the
Nope.
hearing, the evidence part? Okay, so we will consider the hearing closed. I have at 7:20. The evidence portion of this hearing is closed at 7:22, and we'll ask you, Jeff, now formally to start drafting a decision. So it's rendered, I assume. because not, because I just asked you to do it and you have agreed to do it. But don't we have a much more greater time to write the decision, don't we, Jeff?
Well, if we go to the outside, we have 90 days.
Yeah, well, I don't want to do that. But how about in January? What's a good time in January for all of us to meet? Can we all meet in January?
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, Jeff, when can you get it done in January, Jeff? Let's say after the 11th, but obviously not the 18th because it's a holiday.
Yeah, it would have to be, I could do it, that following week, probably.
The week of the 18th?
Yeah, it would be best if it was the last week in January that we actually met.
Okay, I have no problem with that. Jeff and Herb Gilmore and Andy Bird, do you have a problem with 28th? I'm sorry, the 25th or 26th, the 27th, the 28th, one of those 4 days?
Fine.
I will say that for me, the later in the month, the better. So something even like the closer to the end of that, that week is, I think, a little easier than the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Jeff, your choice, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, not Friday, obviously.
Why don't we say, let's see. We could do Monday. It won't conflict with planning board.
Okay, we're talking about Monday, January 25th. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, 7 o'clock.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to have this as the first item on the agenda, Andy. So you could stay if you want, Andy. We have another couple of matters on the agenda. You can stay if you want, but you don't have to stay. But you might want to attend on the 25th. You don't have to, but you might.
Okay, I'll write it on my calendar. And the meeting's at 7?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll get to you by a few minutes after 7. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. Let's continue down with the agenda. Item number 3. We're continuing the public hearing for special permit variance, again, relevant to the application of Stephen and Megan Mikol Jeskuk. Am I saying that? Megan, are you here to save me?
We're here. It's Mikolajczyk.
Mikolajczyk, thank you. I apologize once again.
No problem.
Sorry.
It's not my second language at all. But for reconstruction of a house at 32 Lake Drive, this is case number 20-002. I'm recalling in the minutes a couple of things happened, and one of the things that happened is the zoning board members agreed that I would consult with town council Donna McNichol, and I see that she's now appearing here, and she is here. Hello, Donna. You can unmute yourself if you want, and to discuss with her whether or not she felt she had any conflicts of interest, given that she is also a resident of the town of Shutesbury and lives also on the lake on the same street, but not in a butter. And Donna did report to me that she felt there was no conflict of interest. Does anybody want to speak on the issue of conflict of interest before we proceed anymore? Jeff or Andy or Herb Gilmore, do you want to speak on that issue? Anybody? Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm not sure if I want to speak on conflict of interest. As long as Donna is comfortable herself, I'll accept that.
Okay.
The thing I want to point out, though, is the minutes that we approved do state that the public hearing was closed at the last meeting.
Yes. I should have said the continuation of the of the deliberation portion of the public hearing, is what I should
I
have said.
think there may be an issue with that.
Okay, all right.
I didn't notice in the minutes a motion and a roll call vote on closing the public hearing. Did that occur and it's just not in the minutes?
Probably there was a motion, whether there was a roll call vote. I mean,
It's required under the governor's order that any votes in virtual meetings be by roll call,
okay,
because some people come in by phone and so they don't know who's voting.
yeah.
So that's a requirement under the governor's order.
I can't say we did that. You know, we obviously, I asked, roll call would be specifically asking that specific person, how do you vote, nay or abstain, yes or no, right? That's
Well,
what
they
we
have
would
to
say,
state their names.
Yeah, they have to state their names themselves.
But I also, if there was a motion and a second, that needs to be in the minutes.
Yeah, there was a motion in a second, I'm sure of that. And we should probably put that in the minutes, but I don't think there was a specific where I asked, I did what I just did, which is, how do you vote, Jeff? How do you vote, Andy Bird? How do you vote, Herb Gilmore? And that types of, is what I did, not them identifying their names. I don't think that was part of it.
I mean, I think if they were identified and you called out their name, that would be adequate.
Well, I
Chuck.
can't say if I call out their name or not. How do you all feel? And I waited for someone to speak. And if someone didn't speak quickly enough, I might have said their names. How about you, Jeff? How about you?
I wonder.
I can't remember. I mean, that was a month ago.
I think it might make sense to redo it just in case and make sure it's reflected in the minutes.
So
Okay.
I will make a motion to close out the public hearing portion of this hearing and enter the deliberative phase.
In other words, the evidentiary.
I'm sorry, the evidentiary portion of this hearing. I will make a motion to close out the evidentiary portion of this hearing and move on to the deliberative phase.
And okay, does someone second that?
I'll second it, but I want to discuss it.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff. You're second, so why don't you say what you want to say and let's start discussing it.
When I read the minutes, I was a little bit surprised because it was my impression that we had left the hearing open.
Okay.
So I saw that and it perked me up, and because I thought we still had the hearing open. So I'm interested in what Herb and Andy recall of the meeting, and also whether Tessa executed a continuation form with the applicants last time. Because I thought we were still in the public hearing phase, but.
You mean when you say the public hearing phase, you mean the evidentiary stage? So that's what you thought?
Yes.
Okay,
I thought.
okay.
I
now
thought
we know
that
we have a
tonight
problem since we all have different recollections of what
Yeah.
happened. So I think it underscores Attorney Donna McNichol's point.
I think
So-
the other thing that you want to keep in mind, and I'm sure Jeff's aware of this, is that if in fact you closed out the hearing, the timelines in which you're subject to under 40A were reinstituted on December 1st. Excuse me, by the governor. So in fact, if you've closed the hearing, you're within your 90 days of voting and rendering a decision and getting it filed with the town clerk.
Mhm.
Obviously, if you haven't closed out, then the 90 days hasn't started yet, but I just want to make sure everybody's clear on the procedure. Because
Okay.
all the timeline stays
Well,
and polling that have gone on since November 17th, March 17th, when he filed his first order,
yeah.
and the SJC filed their first order, are now done.
Well, obviously, since we all have some difference of opinion as to what happened, I think the conservative approach here would be to keep it open right now. I also see there's an attorney here, James Martin, who's representing the applicants. So since there's now an attorney here, it seems to me to make sense if maybe the attorney wants to offer some more evidence. I mean, we're in the deliberation stage. So let me ask you, Attorney James Martin, do you have anything to offer us in this situation today?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. My name's James Martin. I'm from the law firm Robinson Donovan in Springfield, and I represent the applicants here today. And I'm glad you brought up the issue about whether or not to have the hearing remain open or deemed closed, because there is a conflict. I agree with all of the advice that Don has given you. And I would also point out that the agenda today that was published, which goes to the public, including the applicants, says there will be a public hearing tonight. That's so. My first comment is that I don't think you have any choice but to continue the hearing and conduct another portion of it tonight rather than close it get go. Secondly, yes, I do have several things I'd like to present to you on behalf of the applicants regarding this situation.
Okay, so let's do just to make sure we've got it straight right now. I'm going to do a roll call. And the motion on the floor is to keep the hearing open for evidentiary purposes. Since we're all clear that that's what's going on, in view of advice of counsel and in view of the fact that there's an attorney now here. Go ahead, Jeff Lacy. I see you waving your hand.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. The motion is to close the hearing. And if we want to leave it open, we need to vote that motion down.
I concur.
Then
I think
yes. Let's do that then. Is someone second that motion?
I seconded. I think Andy made and I seconded.
Okay, all right.
And then so if we all vote no, then we will continue in the public hearing, the evidentiary public hearing phase.
Okay, so let me ask Jeff Lacy, how do you vote on the motion that you made?
I vote nay.
Okay, Andy Berg, how do you vote?
I vote nay.
And for the record, just in case, Herb Gilmore, how do you vote?
Nay.
Okay, and I, as the chair, votes nay. So now, go ahead, Donna.
Chuck, could you just explain for Attorney Martin why there's 4 members when it's a 3?
There's actually 3 voting members, but my practice is this. When there's 3 voting members, and the 3 voting members are Andy Bird, Jeff Lacy, and myself, and Herb is here as an alternate, but I still like Herb to participate and vote in case one of us, myself or Andy or Jeff, can't make it. He just comes in and we just go back to his votes. So that it is a board of 3. Attorney Martin, it's a board of 3, and because it's a board of 3. We have to have unanimous of the 3. Any one of us could so-called veto the application, so to speak. Okay, but it is a board of 3. There are 3 voting members and 1 alternate member. Okay.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman and Attorney McNichol, would Mr. Gilmore be voting on the decision?
No, he can't.
No.
I understand that. I just wanted to make sure. And I also, if someone was unavailable and you were to vote on this at a next meeting, I'm of the opinion that he could not step in unless he was a designated voting member at the opening of the hearing. Do you treat it differently, Donna?
No.
Okay, so I just want.
Well, let me ask you something. Wait a minute.
No.
What if either Jeff Lacy or myself or Andy Berg became deceased or hospitalized or in a coma? What do you say? I'm just trying to understand.
The hearing would have to be restarted.
Okay.
Wait.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Herb Gilmore is an alternate.
Yes.
And he's been present at all of these meetings.
It doesn't matter, Jeff. It doesn't matter. You designate the people that are on the board for the hearing at the commencement of the hearing. You can't pull somebody in during the hearing to do that.
Okay. Well, I'll defer to your judgment.
I'll check to make sure, but I'm very confident of that.
Well,
But I'll check and make sure.
I thought that was the purpose of an alternate, to be,
No, the purpose of an alternate is if somebody can't from the commencement, say that Chuck had a conflict from the commencement, the alternate would come in, sit, make up the 3-member board and go through the hearing. But you can't have 4 people listening to the evidence and just sort of drop off the alternate at the end. That's not how it works. The alternate's there to either be a voting member through the hearing process or not.
Okay.
But I'll check to make sure, but I'm very confident of that.
Herb, do you want to make a statement?
Well, I just have a question. Is it okay or legal for me to be present at these meetings?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, you're anybody in the world can be present.
Okay.
Okay, it's a public hearing. All right, procedurally, we're now, is there any, let me ask you, Donna, since you're here and you have counsel here, do we have to make another procedural vote? I mean, we've already voted it down, so we're gonna be able to reopen the hearing.
So you're
for
in the
evidence.
public, you're still in the public hearing.
Yeah, we're in the public hearing.
Evidentiary.
So, all right, so there's no further reason to take any more votes at this time, correct?
No, correct.
Okay, great. All right, so since we're still in the public hearing and we're still taking evidence, and now, and since the applicants have counsel here, so I'll turn it back over to you, Attorney James Martin, if there's anything you want to add to this, to the evidence and eventually argument or discussion.
Yes, thank you. I've read the minutes of the meetings that have been conducted this far. I've reviewed the plans and the application by my client. And I think there's no disagreement as to the general overview of the situation here. They wish to construct a replacement cottage at their property. Because the existing structure does not meet the setback guidelines of your current zoning bylaws, they need a special permit. And so they've come before this board after the building inspector instructed them to do so, to seek that special permit. And in reviewing the minutes and in reviewing the submissions, it appears to me that the only issue that has been of some degree of discussion or contention is the height of the proposed new cottage. And so I ask you to consider the following. Some of it is legal and some of it is practical. The current structure setbacks on the side yards is non-conforming to your present. However, the applicant's submission clearly shows that they are building on the existing footprint. And so the non-conforming nature of this structure is going to be retained. So they are not altering, changing, increasing the non-conforming structure from the side yard setbacks. I believe you're approximately 8 feet, right, Megan? Yeah, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, about 8.5 feet, I think.
And currently, that's the current setup.
Yes.
And you're planning on building on that footprint, correct?
Yes.
Exactly.
So in terms of the standard, which I'm sure this board has heard on many occasions, is whether or not the addition would increase the non-conforming nature of said structure. So we know from the plans before you that the first part of that analysis is that it is not increasing the non-conforming structure, the nature of the structure on the setbacks. So then, Mr. Chairman, I would refer you to the case. Let me get the name of it for you. I can provide a copy of it for the board and council. I'm sure Ms. McNichol is familiar with it. I know I have it here somewhere, just a second. Here it is. The case is called Willard versus the Board of Appeals. And it's one of the seminal cases in the interpretation of substantially non-conforming uses. And here, as in that case, they went through a three-part analysis. So the first part of the analysis is the board must make specific findings as to what is the non-conforming nature of the structure. And the applicant's presentation and position as plans show that the only non-conforming nature are the side yard setbacks in terms of under your zoning bylaws. So to build it on the non-conforming footprint does not in any way alter, increase, or change the non-conformity from that viewpoint. Now, as I said before, what seems to be an issue here is going to 26.5 feet, which is taller than the current structure and allows them to put dormers on it so that they can use it. Interestingly enough, the court says in the Willard case that it can't be detrimental or non-conforming if it meets the existing zoning bylaw. So here, the applicant is actually could go to 28 feet and still be in compliance with your bylaws. I believe that's correct, Mr. Chairman, correct? You can go up to 28 feet in the Lake
Yes,
District?
28 feet is the limit
28.
in the Lake District, and we're in the Lake District. That's correct.
Right. So here they are asking to go to 26.5 feet. Now the dormers do not in any way impact any violation of the zoning bylaw for setbacks or height. So that aspect of the plan does not affect or cause any further review. So I'm hesitant to say that this is really a very direct, cut and dry analysis of the standard of whether or not it's substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. First of all, we know it's not detrimental to the neighborhood and that there's houses all on this street. So another house is not under the law and under all the case law is not different. The question is how it conflicts with these bylaws. And it does conflict with the side yard setbacks, but they're grandfathered in and they remain grandfathered in. And so I'd like to read to you excerpts. One is that
James, can I stop you for a second? Can you give me the citation of that case just so I can have it?
Again, 25 Mass App 15, or if you prefer, it's 514 Northeast 2nd 369.
One more time for the minutes, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. 25 Mass, MASS period, APP period, CT period 15, or 514, and it's capital N period, capital E period, 2nd, 369. It's a 1987 case from the Court of Appeals. And in that case, the building inspector turned them down. They appealed to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board of Appeals turned them down. The applicant went to the Superior Court. The Superior Court upheld the Zoning Board of Appeals. And in a very thorough, thoughtful, and groundbreaking way, the Court of Appeals reversed everyone and sent it back to the Zoning Board of Appeals with instructions on how to handle the situation. So that case, as I was starting to say, says that the accept clause requires a Board of Appeals to make an initial determination whether a proposed alteration or addition to a non-conforming structure would increase the non-conforming nature of said structure. It goes on to say the quoted language should be read as requiring a Board of Appeals to identify the particular respect or respects in which the existing structure does not conform to the requirements of the present bylaw, and then determine whether the proposed alteration or addition would intensify the existing non-conformities or result in additional ones. The language later on in the case says that in addition to making these specific findings, another determination should be made. Whether or not the addition, alteration, or construction would increase the non-conforming nature of such structure. And again, they say that it should be read as requiring the Board of Appeals to identify the particular respect or respects in which the existing structure does not conform to the requirements of the present bylaw, and then determine whether the proposed alteration or addition would intensify the existing nonconformities or result in additional ones. If the answer to that question is a negative, the applicant will be entitled to the issuance of a special permit. So I urge you, as you look at the evidence, look at the facts, look at the drawings that have been submitted, look at the case law, that I think you have no other way you can go other than to determine that by building on the current footprint and by building at a height that is within the current zoning structure height, that this special permit should be granted as a matter of right, because it can't be substantially more detrimental since it's exactly the same finding. So that's the approach that I think is the correct approach for this board. As you can see from this case, both the town and the applicant spent a lot of money appealing this all the way up to the appeals court. I mean, Megan has grown up on this lake. Her family's been there a long time. This is a dream come true for this young couple to be able to acquire a piece of land there and build a house and raise their family like Megan and her siblings were able to do. They are very committed to this project. I'm pointing this out to you not to be, erudite, but to say, in my legal opinion, and I'm going to call upon Attorney McNichol for the record to see if she's prepared to give a legal opinion on the standard that must be applied by this board, that it would be a shame for each side, and especially the town in these difficult economic times, to be spending money on an appeal that I think is clear cut based on the Willard case. And there's lots of other cases, Mr. Damari, but I didn't want to turn this into a legal lecture. If Megan and Steve have any other specific things they'd like to point out about the house and what I've said, I'd invite them to say that now. Would you folks want to chime in any way?
I think we've covered everything the past 3 meetings.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, you folks on the board who, every time I go before a board, I always thank them for all the time that you've volunteered spending at these meetings. I go to a lot of these meetings over the last 40 years, but, on the record, I'm getting paid. So, it's a tremendous contribution you make to your community for doing this. And I hope you.
Oh, no.
James, you're stiff. You're just kind of,
Yeah.
It's like you've been zapped. So you're probably having an internet. All right,
There he
he's
is.
gone.
He'll be
You're on
back.
mute,
There he
Jeff.
is again. There he is again. Okay, go ahead, James.
You're on mute,
Unmute.
Jim.
You're muted. You're muted, James.
I said, I don't know, all of a sudden my screen went blank. I don't know. Mr. Damari was sick of hearing me.
I hear you now.
Okay. So, given the fact that these cases say that you have to make specific findings of nonconformity and then see how they are increased, and given my review and analysis of the entire file, and I'm unable to find any, let alone whether or not they're greater, I don't see how you have any choice but to grant these folks well-deserved special permits so that they can move forward with their project. Steve did say to me the other day on a call that, they have a local contractor who they've had lined up for a long time to try and start the work. And, they feel like, if this is going to go the route of litigation, that they need to let that person know so that they can take other work in this time where, you don't want to hold someone, string them out on this. But so that's a little practical consideration as well. But
All right.
so
Okay.
I'd ask you to look carefully at what the standard, and if you want to have any dialogue as to how you think there is a substantial increase in the detriment to the neighborhood under your statute and your bylaw, I'd be happy to have that discussion with anyone. But unless there are facts different than what are in the record so far, there are none. And I would ask Ms. McNichol if she has had an opportunity to review this and has any comments on the standard that the board must apply and the specific findings that they must make?
Donna, go ahead.
Sure. I didn't review the Willard case for tonight, so I want to hold in abeyance my interpretation of it, although I think Attorney Martin is correct. As you and I have discussed, Chuck, I think that the standard of detrimental to the neighborhood is a very important standard in the sense that it needs to be the neighborhood. And the neighborhood is defined through the case law as the lake area. It would be a significant area. So in discussing detrimental to the neighborhood, it's really important to remember that it's the neighborhood, not an individual, but the neighborhood, and that's significant. I think, as you know, there's two provisions in Chapter 48, Section 6 around nonconformity. And those two provisions have what's called the accept clause, as Jim said. And the accept clause applies to single and two-family homes. So
Correct.
the standard that you apply here is different than if you had a multifamily, a commercial, an industrial property of that nature. It's an easier standard to meet. The court cases clearly indicate that you need to make findings against the special permit rather than in a commercial or industrial or multifamily situation where it's easier, it's more at your discretion to deny it, but that you very specifically have to make findings about the nonconformity because of the accept clause. The accept clause cases are very clear that single and two-family homes get a break, essentially, in layman's terms, for these special permits. So as I said, I didn't review the Willard case before tonight. So, but I certainly am familiar with it. I would certainly want to review it if the board has any concerns or wants to really discuss the Willard case in depth with me. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, all right, let's hold that for a second. I do want to give any abutters an opportunity to, since the evidence is now open, continues to be open, I do want to give any abutters who may be present here this evening yet another opportunity to be heard as to evidence, or if you want to comment on any of the arguments that have been made by either of the attorneys, that's fine too. Are there any abutters here presently who want to say anything? And most of you seem to be muted. I'm assuming you can hear me. But if you want to speak, please unmute yourself. I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I see 8 people here. Some appear to be abutters, though I'm not sure. A couple I know are abutters. You continue to be muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to come on. Hi,
Who is this?
David Holmes.
Oh, David Holmes. Go ahead, David.
I have a question. I know you were
I
talking
see
about.
you may speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
I know you're talking about the footprint and the lot size about being the only factors in terms of nonconformity. It's my understanding that there's also that even if you want to go higher, even if you're not going higher than 28 feet, staying within the same footprint, don't you still need a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals?
Well, that's why we're here, to get a special, to decide whether or not a special permit will be granted or not.
But if height doesn't fall under the increasing nonconformity of a structure, then why is that under regulation for needing a permit?
Well, I could ask either Attorney Martin or Attorney McNichol to comment on that if you'd like to.
I'll give it a shot. David, the concept of non-conforming stays with a structure if it violates any of the current zoning bylaw. And because my understanding is this structure violates the side lot requirements, that it's non-conforming. And when we talk about the increasing the non-conformity, say if they're 8 feet from the sidelines and they wanted to go to 5 feet from the sidelines, that would increase the non-conforming nature. But going up, as long as you're within the 28 feet, which is the current bylaw, does not increase the non-conforming nature. It's going either closer to the lake or closer to the road, violating those setbacks. If they wanted to go to 29 feet, it would increase the non-conforming nature. But staying within the current bylaw doesn't increase the non-conforming nature.
So when you're staying within the current footprint, but going higher, and you're needing a special permit from the zoning board of appeals, it's not on the basis of it being non-conforming. It's only considering things like detriment to the neighborhood.
No,
Is that right?
it's required because it's non-conforming. But once it's non-conforming and you need a special permit, then the consideration, the standard the board has to look at is whether it's more detrimental to the neighborhood. But it's a non-conforming structure. But any non-conforming structure that wants to do something to the structure needs a special permit. But whether or not it's detrimental, substantially detrimental to the neighborhood,
Right.
is
What I was hearing,
basically part of that analysis.
what I was hearing from the other lawyer was that if it stays within the footprint but is going higher, that's not making any increase to the non-conforming nature of the structure.
That's right.
And therefore should not even be considered.
That's what Jim's saying. And like I said, if they were trying to go to 29 feet, that would increase the nonconformity of the height. But staying within the 28 feet does not increase the nonconformity of the height because they're complying with the zoning bylaw. In the Goodrich, is it Goldrich case? I can't remember the name of the case. Basically, the appeals court talked very clearly about the footprint being the footprint, the structure on the ground, not the height necessarily, but the footprint of the building on the ground. The height is not necessarily part of the footprint. There are some cases where if it goes much higher, the court has addressed that even if they stayed within the footprint. But they're within the bylaw, and that's why I think Attorney Martin's arguing that as long as they're within the bylaw itself, can't be considered non-conforming because they're complying with the bylaw. It's conforming as far as height goes.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Attorney Martin, do you want to help clarify this for David Holmes?
I think Donna did that fine. He doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
She did an outstanding job. I don't think I could add anything more.
Okay. All right, David, is there anything else you want to say then?
Only that I want to reiterate that I feel like it is increased detriment to the neighborhood. And I know that some members of your board have stated, I saw in the minutes, that you feel like it is not. I want to consider, I feel like that's a subjective judgment. And I don't know how that gets arbitrated in court.
Any lawyers want to comment on that?
I'll take a stab at that. It is not a subjective, it is a fact and legal standard. And the first thing you do, as the court points out in Willard, it's a three-pronged analysis. The first thing you have to do is identify what the nonconformities are. That's not subjective, that's subjective. And here there are nonconformities of side yard setbacks, no question about it. They are 8.5 feet from, and they, under the current zoning bylaw, that would not be permitted. So, but if they build within the current footprint, and maintain the existing non-conforming measurement, then that is not increasing the non-conformity. The second aspect of the analysis is if there's any change that would come in violation of the existing bylaw. And in most of the cases, it's expected that the building or the alteration or the change is trying to push beyond what's allowed. And here, just so happens that your allowance of up to 28 feet, and the applicant only want to go into 26 and a half meets the requirement. So you don't even have to judge that because it's within the bylaw. So that's the answer. I do want to say, Mr. Chairman, or to follow up on Ms. McNichol, with respect to the neighborhood, this is within the Lake Wyola district. It's a district. That's the definition of the neighborhood. And this board has previously granted other special permits. And it would be, I think, almost an open and shut case of arbitrary and capricious nature to not allow this applicant the same application of the Lake Wyola district and the height restrictions. And that applicant went to 28 feet. So at least the most current one that's on your books and records.
Jeff, go ahead.
I'm curious. I'd like to rebut some of this. But I'm wondering.
So you want to do what, Jeff?
I wish to rebut some of this testimony, but I'm wondering if during this phase, it's appropriate that I do so.
I think we opened the door here, so what do you want to rebut? 'Cause I think so we can keep the train of thought going, I'd rather hear it now.
Yeah.
Any objection by other members, I'd rather hear it now. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, we're in the hearing phase. First of all, side setback is not the only non-conforming aspect of this property. It doesn't have the area required in the district, and it doesn't have the frontage required in the district as well. That holds true for most of the lots at Lake Wyola, but it's still two additional non-conforming factors.
But excuse me, those are for the land.
Excuse me, I'm not finished yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I would also say that I'm not sure where neighborhood equals district is a truism. And we have some districts in Shutesbury that are thousands and thousands of acres. And I don't think we have 1,000-acre neighborhoods. So I don't believe that's a true statement that the entire Lake Wyola district is a neighborhood. There are many different areas around Lake Wyola, and we shouldn't view the entire district as one neighborhood. I'm also looking at the Handbook of Massachusetts Land Use and Planning Law, Mark Bobrowski. And, this causes me to want to research Willard more and research Goldhirsch more. Just a quick look at Bobrowski. He says about Willard, it remains open to contention that the Willard test should be read as prescribing an entitlement to a building permit, not a special permit or finding, where no intensification of the nonconformity would result. So he's calling into question the 1987 Willard case and whether that's a hard and fast test. And then,
sorry, can you just give me the citation for that for the minutes?
For the Willard case, I think you already may have that one.
Right, what you just quoted.
Okay, this is the Handbook of Massachusetts Land Use and Planning Law, 2nd edition, Mark Bobrowski.
Could you spell that last name?
Bobrowski. And Donna is very familiar with this work.
Thank you.
He goes on then to talk about a more recent case. See, Willard was 87, and then Goldhirsch came along in 92.
Give us that site, Jeff, the Goldhirsch case, please.
Goldhirsch is 32 Mass, MASS period, APP period, CT period 455 comma, 4/6/1/1992.
Okay, go ahead.
So Goldhirsch comes along in 92, 5 years after Willard. And here's what Bobrowski says about Goldhirsch. The appeals court ruled that consideration of the building footprint is but one factor to be considered in making the necessary determination or findings. The court could not agree with the proposition that there will never be an increase in a structure's non-conforming nature where the proposed alterations are confined to the existing footprint. The Board of Appeals must review all proposed changes to the existing non-conforming single or two-family structures. So I want to review these cases more carefully before accepting Attorney Martin's conclusions.
Okay, if you want an opportunity to do that, obviously, we'll have to continue this hearing yet again. Do you have any objection to that, Jeff?
No, no.
Okay.
I mean,
All right. Go ahead, Andy.
I mean, I don't know. I've got some concerns about that. This has really been dragging on now we're in the third month of this.
I think this is the fourth, isn't it?
The fourth
Go
month.
ahead.
You know, I just this has gone on for a very long time. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, I just think this is putting this is crazy. We're putting the applicants through a lot of misery over something that I think the great majority of the board feels very strongly should move ahead. You know, Tessa, could you clarify whether the applicant signed a continuation form at the previous meeting?
So I was checking back on my notes about the last meeting because of the concern raised about there wasn't a vote to close. And I could not find it in my notes, a formal close. There was discussion that it was the public evidence part was closed, and that, which is what I took notes on, and that it was now onto the deliberation. Because I'm still learning the requirements of the ZBA. I am sorry if I was remiss in reminding the board to hold a specific vote saying that. But I specifically do remember asking if I need to have a continuation for the meeting and being told no, because it was in the deliberation phase, is what I recall.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, just because I think it's important for Tessa, for her. Number one, you have what the law says is you have 65 days to hold the hearing. Once the hearing has started, then you can continue it as many times as necessary to get the job done. And you don't have to sign a continuance. The applicant doesn't have to agree. As long as the board continues it to a date, time, and place certain, and that's in the minutes, you don't have to notify abutters. You basically just continue the hearing. It's only once the hearing closes that you have your 90-day clock starts. To have an applicant sign an agreement with the board when it's absolutely required under the law is if you're extending one of those timelines. For instance, if you can't start the hearing within 65 days, then obviously you need the applicant to agree to extend the 65-day timeline. If you can't deliberate and reach the decision within the 90 days, you need the applicant to agree to sign and continue it. I'm not saying that the practice of the applicant agreeing to continue it's a bad practice. I think it's a good practice. I think it gets it on the record. But I want to be clear between the difference between a legal requirement and something that makes sense for the record so that there's no disputes over those kind of procedural things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So and right now the hearing is open. So we're still, and we have the applicants and I have signed several agreements. So I think there's no issue now about any legal requirements as to the timeline. And we're still in evidentiary stage, again, as we now know. So Andy, your point is well taken. Herb, I know you're not voting, but would you like to be heard about this?
I don't think there's anything more to say than I've said before and what's been said tonight.
Okay, all right. And and again, I believe we had a hearing in September, October, November, and now December. And, and we will have one in January, even if it's just to vote and sign a document. So it's gonna be 5 meetings. My understanding is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Megan and Stephen, is before you came to the Zoning Board of Appeals, you went to 2 other boards already.
Yes.
The Health Board and the Conservation Commission, if I'm correct. Am I correct about that?
You are correct. Yep. And
And I think that's taken before September, our first public hearing. How long have you been trying to get this accomplished, this project accomplished? When did you first come to the town?
August of 2019 for education and guidance. And then after that, we started planning for the perk test for the Board of Health and all that. So, I mean, it's been a slow process the whole way. I mean, it's just the nature of things, right? How things go. So, but it's been almost.
So it's about a year and 5 months you've been at it since you came to us in August for education and guidance. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of my feeling too. I mean, I think this is, and that's how I feel. Jeff, I know you can still feel otherwise, but I think this is, a year and a half approximately. We've been at this one way or another, 4 months in zoning board formally, and before that, almost a year informally. So, I think that the delays are causing expenses. The applicants have been forced to hire counsel. That's expensive. So I think enough is enough. That's my opinion. But obviously, we need your vote, Jeff.
I think that should tell you that this is a problematic project.
Well, it's a problem. There's been an objections, and we're trying to listen to all the objections by yourself primarily, but go ahead, Jeff. Jeff, you wanted to speak.
Given that we're still in the hearing phase, I need to disclose that after a few days after the last meeting that we had, I did phone the applicants, and I suggested to them that they might consider eliminating the dormers that are proposed on the house, but keep the height. That the height itself, with a peaked roof without the dormers, may be an acceptable alternative to think about, because it would take some of the bulk out of the project. It would be a higher house. They'd have higher knee walls. They'd be able to have more light, more room, but without necessarily bulking up the structure, which could reduce the detriments on the neighborhood, at least in my opinion. So I need to get that out there, that I made those comments to the applicant, and that's that.
Okay. Attorney Martin, have you been informed? I assume you've been informed of this proposal by Jeff Lacy. And do you have any comments about that?
Yes, I do. I was just informed Friday. So, it's troublesome and troubling to me. I mean, it's an ex parte communication by a member of the board outside of public hearing. Frankly, I think it's a violation of the open meeting law. And it's an attempt by a board member to negotiate with an applicant property owner to change their project to suit what I guess is he just described as his, aesthetic view of the project, which, by the way, has nothing to do with the standard on which you have to vote. I mean, I will formally say, I think that Mr. Lacy should disqualify himself for having done that. And I would, if he doesn't, I think we would have to reserve our rights on that as to whether or not that was a violation for which he should be disqualified. And whether or not the two of you would be the last remaining two members of the board to vote on the project.
You know, I mean, because I guess I feel very uncomfortable with board members approaching an applicant outside of the context of this meeting with things that we have not discussed as being appropriate or inappropriate. I really feel like they should be going through this venue, you know, because that that makes me really uncomfortable to hear that happened.
Well, please note the record. It was your board member who called them. They did not call.
Yes, and I am on the same page with that. Yes, that is what makes me uncomfortable, because I think as a board, we had not discussed in this venue having anyone reach out to them outside of this venue, and I don't necessarily feel that that's an appropriate thing to have happened.
And I also want to say, Mr. Chairman, that in a comment that was made, the applicants here are not saying we don't need a special permit. They've spent 14 months trying to get a special permit. They're still asking for a special permit because they realize that they are, that the side yard setbacks will be in violation of your current bylaw. But that's why they need the special permit, because it's a non-conforming use that they are looking to replicate. So we're not asking to say no special permits needed. Special permit, we're saying should be granted. But I would ask Ms. McNichol on behalf of the town, as town council, to comment on the disclosure that a member of this voting board has reached out to an applicant and intention it with the purpose of trying to negotiate them changing their project to meet his concerns.
Yeah, I'm concerned about it. I'm certainly not going to rule that it's a violation of the open meeting law or anything else at this stage. We want to get more information about it, but I do think under normal circumstances, boards need to make determinations if they want to compromise and then appoint somebody, you know, if they're going to do something like that, or even better yet, have it done in the public hearing itself.
You know, I think my concern is that it feels like it represents this whole board when it doesn't.
All right, I need to address this. It was strictly on behalf of myself, and it was an effort to try to move this case forward because it has been a long time. There hadn't really been any discussion of alternatives. I didn't call for the purpose of negotiating anything, simply suggesting that perhaps they consider that type of modification. And I fully intended to and did disclose it at this hearing, and with the purpose of getting it into the record.
All right.
And I think it's important to put on the record that, you know, what Jeff did was certainly not in any way in bad faith. I mean, it was just a good faith move to move it forward, but whether or not it's appropriate is another issue. But I don't think there should be any question from anybody that it was not done in good faith.
Jeff, in view of the comments of Andy, myself, and Herb, are you still insisting that we continue this so you can do research on these cases?
No, if I'm not insisting that we can continue the hearing, and if the applicant and the rest of the board members want to close the hearing, I'll vote in favor of closing the hearing.
Right. But then,
I think everybody should be upfront about this. The question is, if
the question
is Jeff open,
vote, Jeff. So that's
is Jeff
important
open to voting for the application if he can do the research, and closed to voting for the application if he can't? I mean, that's a really important question.
That's the question I was trying to ask. I don't want to be so direct about it, but thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
I could probably I could probably do the research on the Willard and Goldhirsch cases myself and have that influence my vote, I guess. I don't know if the results of my research have to be a part of the hearing. I mean, I read a little bit of what Bobrowski said about those two cases. I read that into the record tonight. I don't know that I have to do a treatise on it and read all that into the record, but I am going to find out more about those cases, and perhaps it will influence my decision, because the applicant's attorney is arguing sort of on the one hand that it's a special permit, but on the other hand that we really don't have any discretion, and we have to approve the special permit, and I want to resolve that for myself before I vote.
And Jeff, I would encourage you to read the other cases that Mark has in the accept clause section under, and if you're in section 10 or 9, I don't know which chapter you're in. But I think that it's really important to read that whole line of cases around the accept clause, because I think what Jim's trying to, I think what Mark was trying to say and what Jim's trying to say is that you're not entitled to a building permit as of right, but it's a different standard for granting of the special permit for the substantially detrimental to the neighborhood than a commercial, industrial, or multifamily use. And some of those cases under the accept clause that Mark discusses in that section sort of try and show that differential between just a regular special permit and the discretion of the board and an accept clause special permit. It's not that the board still doesn't have discretion, but it appears from what Mark says and from the cases that he draws from, it's less discretion. So I'd encourage you to not only just read Willard and Goldhirsch, but there's a couple other cases there that I think get into that whole concept. And I think that if you feel that this legal argument's really important to the way you vote, I would go back to the applicants and to Attorney Martin and basically say, would you prefer to have one more night of essentially a legal discussion on the standards for an accept clause special permit, and let Jim and Jeff sort of go back and forth on these legal principles, or just insist that Jeff vote tonight, not being satisfied with the legal arguments right now, because it seems to me that's where we are right now. And I don't want the applicants to just be denied because everybody thinks it's taken too long. I agree, it's taken a long time. It's cost them a lot of money. There's something just problematical about, I think that's one of the reasons there's an accept clause, because people that are just trying to make changes to single and two family homes are very different applicants than commercial, industrial, or multifamily applicants. And so I am concerned about how long it's taken, and I am concerned about the cost. But if you force the vote tonight just because of that, and it ends up being 2-1, you've just forced them into more time and more cost. And I think that resolving these issues so that everybody feels they're clear on them, and then a vote where everybody feels that their questions have been answered, including David, who's asked some very good questions about nonconformities, dealing with those makes a lot more sense to me, even though it has taken longer than it should, and it, and costs more than it should for a single or two family applicant.
And if I may,
We
Mr.
know
Lacy,
we're meeting on the 25th. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
if I may, Lacy, I just want to clarify, in my comments, I was suggesting is that under the case law, no matter which case you look at, the board has to make specific findings. That is clear across the board. You have to make specific findings. Your discretion to make those findings is more limited, as Attorney McNichol has pointed out, in a residential matter. And so the specific findings you must make, what I'm suggesting is that are on the facts before you right now, and the evidence and record are going to lead you to the ultimate conclusion that it is not any greater detriment of a non-conforming use. And therefore, a special permit should be granted. But you have to make those findings. Someone can't say, according to the case law, well, you know, I don't like the look of a dormer. That's not a specific finding that shows an increase of substantial detriment to the neighborhood. If, like one person said before, you know, we're 8.5 feet. If we wanted to go to 2 feet, well, that is a substantial encroachment that would be potentially detrimental to the neighborhood. The neighbor next door would have a house that they could reach out and get a cup of coffee from. But here it is an pre-existing non-conforming use. And therefore, when you look at what the non-conforming uses are and compare them to the today's standard, that's why it's substantially increasing the detriment. If you're allowed a 28-foot house, if you go to 27 feet, you're within the bylaw. If you're staying within 8.5 feet, you're maintaining the non-conforming use. And so, but we need a special permit because we want to go to that 8.5 feet. And as Donna said, I think we don't want to drag this out any longer than is necessary. And they would like to avoid, as much as they like me, they like not seeing me and not going to court. But you know, that's what I do, and I'm there now, and I was there last week, and I'll be there next week. So, you know, but it's different for them, and it's different for the town. I mean, let's not overlook the cost of the town. There is and if you reach the same conclusions I reach and Donna reaches legally, then I think that discretion has been whittled down, and you'll make those findings. I would ask for Steve and Megan to chime in here to see what your position is on whether or not, if they went one more meeting to give Mr. Lacy time to do his own research and consult. He's totally totally able to consult with town council as well, because any member of the board can do that.
So what's the timeline from here on out? Either way, Chuck, if we go to the next meeting, the 25th.
Well, the 25th is a proposed meeting that we're set, and of course I would prefer that's when we reconvene. But if you insist on something earlier, we can do that too. But you know, I think that it's important to give all of us a chance to look at all of this. And I wouldn't even mind you, Jim Martin, Attorney Martin, if you could spend a little bit of time drafting a proposed finding, just those 3 points. I mean, I think you know, in your own words, and submit them. I would like to see those if you could. But I'm not talking about a whole treatise or a big decision. I'm just talking about those 3 points.
With my client's authorization, I'd be happy to.
I'm just
Okay.
sorry.
Right.
So
I'm asking.
I just had a question. So we have the proposed 25th, and then if we get denied, you have 20 days from when. How long does it take to write the finding from the meeting? I'm sorry. How long does
it be? It's been as short as a week and as long as a month. That's been our tradition. A week to a month.
Well, for the prior
after the
case,
25th.
Jeff's gonna submit the decision on the 25th, so in 5 weeks. That's how the process works?
Who's that? Who's talking?
It's
Megan.
Megan.
Oh,
On the prior.
Well, yes, that's exactly
On the prior
right.
application, so
It-
it takes 5.
It's usually within a week or within a month. Well, it's between a week and a month is our normal times of continuing cases. They've been as short as a week and as long as a month. This is approximately a month. I'm calling this a month, although technically it's a month and 4 days, I suppose. But
So
it's
who
usually
writes-
within the next week or the next month or somewhere in between. That's the usual
Who writes the decision?
process that we have.
Does the chair write the decision?
Well, normally Jeff writes the decision, and if it's a vote against, it will be Jeff that writes the decision, I'm
Okay.
sure. But if it's a vote for, it's another reason I want Attorney Martin to give me at least those 3 points in one paragraph or one page. If you allow,
So
if
do
you
you
authorize me to do it. It seems to
each
me.
board member's decision in that? Or does the board have to
No,
collectively?
I'm gonna poll, I mean, as Donna McNichols made it real clear, I'm gonna poll every member. When we actually have the vote, I'm gonna poll them. There's no question about it, since we're in this
Megan,
kind
I
of.
think just to be clear on the process, once the board closes the public hearing, they have a deliberation and they vote. Once they voted, depending on the vote, they usually assign somebody to write the decision. Denials are written much quicker than grants because they don't have to have so many specific findings. Normally, the boards that I represent in the small towns basically assign somebody to write the decision and circulate it, and at their next meeting, review it, make any edits, and sign it. Gets filed with the town clerk, usually within 24 to 48 hours after that. Your appeal period starts upon it being filed with the town clerk. So probably at the outset, although no promises, because they have 90 days, 30 days plus another 48 hours to get it to the town clerk.
We request an earlier meeting in January?
Certainly can. Certainly can.
Donna, while
I mean,
contemplating that, may I ask you, is it the practice of the board, if whatever date is continued to in January, assuming it's continued, do they deliberate and vote and state their findings? But my question's grounded in, if two of the board members want to make a finding and one person doesn't, how do they decide if there's any conflict on a finding? Because the
well,
findings,
again, another reason I'm asking you to write this up, though, that is consistent with your legal analysis, and certainly close to mine and Donna's as well. But in your own words, since you're going to carry the case beyond this, would be important for me, because I would likely adopt that analysis. I'm going to read these cases myself, these two cases. And Jeff, if you want to submit anything to me about those paragraphs in Dombrowski, please do that too. But I certainly want to look at this myself, and I don't think my mind's going to be changed in any way, shape, or form here. I've been for a long time supporting this application, and I don't think that's going to change, but for lots of reasons. But this is even solidifies it even further. But I would like January 25th, but if you want to do it something earlier, we could do that. Again, it's subject to all of us agreeing on a date. That's the real problem, is trying to get a date that we're all comfortable with. I think Andy Berg already expressed earlier in the month is not so good for him, if I'm hearing you right.
Well, look, I mean, it is true. I understanding, I think with the resolution that I would like to move this along, even though early in the month is not as good as it could be, I would be very happy to stop by for an hour or two as we discuss this more. So like, I don't want necessarily what's the easiest for me to sort of cause a delay in this. So I mean, I would be definitely happy to meet if other board members were happy to meet earlier in the month. I would be happy to meet earlier in the month as well.
It's really generous of
I
you.
mean, I'll certainly do that if you want it. Jeff,
Jim, I
and
think to answer
Herb,
your
any
question,
comments?
Jim, to answer your very specific question, I don't believe that I would have the board members that vote in favor of it doing specific findings if there's a no vote, because I think the denial would just be written as the member who voted no.
okay, I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But I would still like you, if your clients consent, to submit something in case it is a yes vote. I want it to be in your words, Jim, if that's okay, if your clients consent.
And
okay, Jeff Lacey and Herb Gilmore, comments about, we have a meeting on January 25th. Any comments about an earlier meeting? Again, I'm asking Herb and Jeff Lacy.
Earlier meeting is fine with me.
Okay, Jeff?
I can do an earlier meeting. Yeah, this research won't take me that long. And for me, the purpose of the research is if this line of cases from Willard on clearly indicates that under case law, our discretion is limited because the footprint is not going to be expanded in any way. You know, that could affect the way I vote, and it could affect it in a positive way for the applicant, but I just need to know for sure.
Okay, how much time do you want, Jeff?
Huh?
How much time do you want, Jeff? How much time do you want?
Oh, you know, like maybe a week into January or something.
That sounds good to me.
Jeff, I also
Okay, so let
recommend,
me ask you, Meg. Go ahead, who's talking?
Donna is. Jeff, I would also recommend
Go
you
ahead.
just look at the quick notes Mark has on the definition of neighborhood.
Okay, Megan and Steve, Jeff wants, I think it's fair to say, through the first week of January. Do you have any comments on after that for a meeting time?
We'll make ourselves available for the earliest opportunity that works for the
Well,
board.
I want you to suggest a date so we can see if we can.
The 24th.
Kind of. The 24th is a.
Yeah, it's a Sunday.
No,
All
I'm
right,
just,
so we can
We
be
can't do that.
we can be available.
Mr.
So
January 11th.
Well, could it be the 12th if you don't, I don't know, you meet on Tuesdays by any chance? Is that throwing you off?
And in January, any day but Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Megan,
The
It can't be
11th
the
is
8th.
the planning
It's
board.
a holiday.
11th is the
Pardon me?
planning board, so it would have to be the 12th.
It works for us.
Okay, I already scheduled on the 11th, Megan.
Okay.
Chuck, do you want me there?
Yeah, I think I would like you there.
Okay.
If that's
Is it
okay. I
12?
mean,
Does
I
the
can
12th
talk
work
to-
for you, Donna? The
What?
12th?
12
Is
works
it
for me.
So I'm afraid that 12th is the only day I've got for basically the whole month that I can't do.
All right.
Is there any chance people could do
How
like the
about the
13th?
Sure.
I could.
Yep.
Herb, 13th works for you, Herb?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, thank
Jeff,
you.
works for you. Attorney Martin, it works for you, the 13th?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's, does anybody feel the need? I think we're still well within the time limits. We could still, to make it safe, we could sign another continuance. What do you think, Donna? Should we do it? Just be safe about it?
If you all want to, for the record, I think that's fine.
And,
All right, let's
and
just
for the
do it.
record,
So, Tessa,
yeah, I can screen share it in just a moment. Just to clarify, town council mentioned Mark's definition of neighborhood. What is Mark, or who is Mark?
Oh, I'm sorry, Tessa. Mark Bobrowski.
Okay.
The same book that Jeff's been referring to. Sorry.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
make sure you make a motion for date, time, and place certain for the continuation and a roll call vote.
okay. So does someone want to make a motion to continue this public hearing until Wednesday, January 13th at 7 p.m.? Does anyone want to make that motion? Then I want a second.
So moved.
Jeff is making the motion.
Second.
Via
Jeff
Zoom.
is- And
Via
Andy is
Zoom.
second. Okay. All right. So how do you vote, Jeff Lacy? Why don't you state your name and say how you vote on this motion to continue this public hearing until January 13th at 7 p.m. Jeff Lacy.
Jeff Lacy, aye.
Okay.
Andy Berg, aye.
How do you vote, Andy? Okay, Chuck Damari, aye, and we'll, I know where you stand, Herb, so we'll just, we'll take it that way. So all in favor, all the ayes have it. Opposed, there are none opposed. So we will continue this hearing until January 13th. And again, I'd like if the applicants could work with James Martin to see if you have any objection to him writing something less than 1 page, probably just a paragraph, to submit it to me in advance, I would appreciate that.
And
Okay?
town council's opinion was that we didn't need to do the paperwork. Is that?
But
No,
that
but
I
we're gonna do it anyway.
have no
We're gonna do
concern.
it anyway, okay?
Yeah, I certainly don't think it hurts for the record.
Let's just do it anyway, okay? We've done a couple of them already. We didn't do it last time. Why is everybody gone? Oh, there it is.
Yep, sorry.
Okay,
I was
okay,
prepared.
I'm assenting to this. You have my signature there, okay?
Mhm.
All right, give it to the applicants.
21. First time I'm writing that.
Okay, there I am, and you're gonna sign it for me right now, right? And I assent that is my e-signature and with today's date, the 21st, 2020. Applicant, do you assent to this applicant?
Yes.
Applicants, okay, so we're gonna put the e-signature of the 2 applicants with today's date.
Is it Steven or is Steve acceptable?
You can put an N on the end. Stephen. Thank you.
JCZ UK.
Huh.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I have it right
She was doing
above.
well there.
I have it right above. That's what.
CZ UK. I don't know if it
Yeah.
Good enough.
close enough. You got to sing it to Mickey
I
Mouse.
missed the Z before the U, Tessa.
I still is. Oh dear. Sorry, guys.
That's all right.
There we go. Okay, and I will clean that up.
You have the date there, and I can see it.
Yeah, I will clean that
Okay.
up. The format's not working, but I will clean it up.
Okay, that's fine. All right, we all agreed? We agreed, applicants and myself as the chair, all right? We agreed?
Mr. Chairman, could we ask the clerk to circulate the copy of that to the applicant and myself and Donna?
Yes, yeah, let's, yes, make sure, when I will forward, once you give it to me, probably in the next day or two, I will forward that to both the other attorneys that are in the room. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Just be so kind to maybe, Donna, maybe you can send me an email with James. I think I have your email anyway, James, but just to make sure I have your right email, so that I'll immediately forward it to you when I get it, probably tomorrow or the next day.
Okay.
All right, so okay, so we're gonna move on the agenda now. We have another vote to take. Let me go back to the agenda, if I can find the agenda.
All right, well,
We
thank
don't need
you.
to any longer, right?
Thank you very much for
I'm
your
sorry?
attention, your efforts.
Yes, we don't need anybody else.
Thank you for moving the
Anybody
meeting
else
up.
to-
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah,
Everybody
everybody
have a
stay
nice holiday.
Thanks you to everybody.
Yeah.
Take care.
stay safe.
Let's go to old business. Let's stick to go to number 5, old business. Just a reminder to everyone that the application fees for the special permits and variances were increased from $300 to $400. And the application fees for site plan reviews were increased from $100 to $200, both beginning on January 1st, 2021. That was voted in favor at the October 14th, 2020 meeting. Now we have another motion before the board. I think it was made, but I probably safer to make it again. I think the motion is to increase also from 100 to 200. Was that in the minutes? I forgot. Or was it to go to $400, or was it to go to $200? Does anybody recall? I know it's in the minutes. This is on the appeal from the building inspector. The appeal from the building, an adverse finding or on the building inspector.
That's correct. And I believe it was to go from $300 to $400 to match the other
All right.
variance and special permit application
Okay.
fees that we had previously approved.
Okay, so does someone want to make that formal motion?
I will make a motion to
Okay.
increase the fees for appeals from building commissioner determinations from $300 to $400. And I believe that was effective as of January 1st. Is that correct? January 1st,
Yes.
2021.
Yes, and we already discussed it at the last meeting. Is there a second to that?
Second,
Okay, so any discussion?
yes.
You go ahead, Jeff.
The planning board at its last meeting reviewed a whole table of adjusted, mostly special permit fees
Yeah,
for all of the things that the planning board does,
yeah,
all the different categories of things that we do. We're still considering all of those, but we adopted one for large-scale ground-mounted solar facilities, and that fee went up to $2,000.
whoa.
And then we also provided that we can collect separately for hearing notices, mailing costs, outside consultants, and project management. A whole array of different costs that the town may have to bear. We roped them all in and put them on the applicant. So big projects like that pay big costs, and they go down according to the size of the projects, and the residential fees are still pretty small.
Okay,
But anyway, it's something that I might want to try to get a copy of for us to look at.
would be
So
good.
you can see the scale of the fees that we're talking about.
Okay,
That'd be really, I think that's a cool change.
okay, all right. Any other comments before we vote? Okay, what say you, Andy Berg?
Andy Berg says aye.
What say you, Jeff Lacy?
Jeff Lacy says aye.
Chuck Damari says aye, and I know Herb, say it anyway. Donna's not here.
Aye, aye, aye.
Okay, aye. Your name is what? What's your name?
Herbert Gilmore.
Okay. Okay.
You're still one of us, Herb, even though the attorney isn't elected.
You know, come on.
It's okay. All right. So the ayes have it. Unanimous, effective January 1st, 2021. And we've been discussing this for several months, so I don't feel bad about that short notice. Okay. Back to number 4 on the agenda, any other new business? Okay, hearing none. Back to item number, any education and guidance? Is anybody here that wants education and guidance? Mika, are you still listening? Whoever Mika is.
She has to unmute.
Unmute. Okay, well.
So a piece of education for me.
Go ahead.
On the first case of the metal structure.
Yes.
That was whether or not the land was conforming. That
Yes.
dependent of whether it's conforming or non-conforming.
I mean, I think that they needed a special permit because I'm assuming there's a non-conforming water use. Go ahead, Jeff.
See, I was having problems because the lot itself is probably way small and it doesn't have the frontage, and our non-conforming section only deals with expanding an existing structure. It doesn't deal at all with building a brand new structure. So my fundamental question is the lot even big enough to allow a new structure to be built on it without a variance? But then when I reread 4.2-2B2,
right,
it specifically says provision shall apply to both conforming and lawfully non-conforming lots. So that took that whole dilemma away.
Okay.
I think, Jeff, is it your impression like that if he had been within the setbacks, this was something that he wouldn't have needed to come to us for? Is that
right? Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
All righty, thank you.
A whole new set of perverse problems would present themselves, because then 4.2-2 does not apply. And the provision saying it shall apply to conforming or lawfully non-conforming goes away. So then you're back to the question of, can you put a new freestanding structure on a non-conforming lot without a variance?
So we would have to basically tell them to move it within the setback for them to get this done easily.
Yeah, as weird as it seems, yes.
But this is sort of a way that you get around that.
I think so.
Yeah, you could. You could just make yourself eligible for this provision and then you're covered.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, any other new business or any other education or guidance for ourselves or anybody else? Go ahead, Jeff.
I guess this is old business. It was in the minutes. I was tasked with following up with someone who was wondering whether they had adequate frontage for their lot on Old Wendell Road.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, with the right of way.
There was an old easement for logging, and I polled all my planning colleagues, including a few lawyers, and the conclusion was that they have the frontage.
Okay.
That's counted. That right of way is counted as the frontage.
Right. So I informed him that he had the frontage, in my opinion, but I always qualify that by saying the ultimate decider is the building inspector.
Yep. Okay. Unless there's an appeal from the building inspector's determination.
Yeah.
Then it might be us or the planning board. Okay. All right. No education guidance anymore. No new business. We've got 2 meetings scheduled. That is remind me, the 25th and the 13th. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I got 2 agendas to write. The 25th and the 13th.
Yep.
All right. Let me ask you, Jeff and Andy and Herb, when I send agendas to you, are you getting those agendas from me?
Yes.
All of you? Okay.
Yes.
Sometimes Tessa doesn't get them, so I have to
Yeah, no.
figure that out. Okay. All right. Okay. I don't think we have any site visits to do. We have all of those done. Okay, so I think motion to adjourn. Anybody want to make that?
Please go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff moves to adjourn.
I will second that motion.
Okay, and Donna's not here. If she was here, I would have to say, Jeff, how do you vote on that? State your name, please.
Jeff votes aye at 8:55.
Jeff Lacy votes aye. And Andy Berg votes all in favor.
Andy Berg votes aye, but if I had dropped off the call, we wouldn't have quorum and everyone would have to stay indefinitely.
Right, and I'm Chuck Damari here, and I vote aye too. You learned something new. Of course, this is during the virtual hearing, so that's perhaps why I didn't know that myself.
Yeah,
I've only been in the state since March.
Yeah. I mean, just for the record, I'm gonna check about Herb's status, because I've always understood alternates to be, if an alternate participates in all the hearings, attends all the meetings, then part of the purpose of the alternate is to drop in for a member who, say, has a medical emergency and has to come out.
You think.
That was my understanding too, Jeff, but I don't know where I got it, but I've held that opinion for 25 years.
But it sounds like in order for that to take place, you have to announce ahead of time. So, I mean, you'd have to anticipate an emergency and then say, for the beginning of this deliberation, we're going to let Herb be part of it. But how do you know that? There's a real emergency.
You don't. And I know we have in the past had people jump in at the last minute because the other person just couldn't make it. There was an emergency. They were in the hospital. There was a funeral. So, Donna may be right, but please do check, Jeff.
I will check.
Yeah, that would have relevance for all the boards. So I'd be very interested to get that, have that knowledge.
Yeah, participate.
If you have to start all over, think about that.
Yeah.
The cost.
Your vote wouldn't count. Your vote wouldn't count for the deliberations that took place when you weren't officially a member.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, and And the way you describe it, Jeff, my first year, I was an alternate member, 25 years ago. And that was my understanding. And in fact, my first 5 or 6 years, we had no alternates. So we had members of the Board of Selectmen all of a sudden just join us and vote. One guy named Mr. Bell, is he still here? John Bell? Was that, huh?
No, he doesn't live in Shutesbury any longer. I think he's in a old folks home.
I do remember he was a member of the Board of Selectmen, and there were 2 or 3 occasions where he was pulled in at the last minute. It was quite interesting, let me say.
Yeah. I can imagine he was.
Yeah, yeah, he liked to anyway. I won't say.
Yes.
Okay.
He always had
Right.
a bottle present.
And he has little odors here, All right, so the meeting is officially adjourned. And what time is it? Is it 9 o'clock? Is that what it is? Something like that?
Almost.
Early. It's early.
All right, they adjourn 9 o'clock, 2 hours, perfect. We'll see you all on the 12th, and if you can.
13th.
13th.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
13th.
Okay.
Oh, God, the
13th.
13th. Jeff, if you could give me a couple of paragraphs, maybe you could scan them and send them to me. I'd appreciate that too. Okay. All right.
Okay.
January
All right.
13th,
All right.
Thanks,
January
everyone.
25th.
Good night.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Take
Bye.
care,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you,
Bye
everyone.
bye. Have a good night.
Happy
Happy
solstice.
holidays, everybody.